This day was different. The skies fractured. Silent at first, the massive ships broke through the clouds like shadows swallowing the sun. There was no warning, no message. The Kralix, a race from beyond the stars, descended in cold precision. To them, Earth was nothing more than another obstacle in their grand plan of galactic expansion, a wild and untamed world in need of cleansing. For eons, the Kralix had moved through the cosmos, system by system, eradicating what they deemed chaotic. To them, predators were an aberration, and jungles a disorderly sprawl that encouraged rebellion. They believed in control, order, and precision. Planets that could not be easily tamed were transformed. Forests were burned, predators wiped from existence. On Earth, lions, crocodiles, bears, and other predators would be first to fall. The message was clear. Earth's wilderness was incompatible with the Kralix's vision of a sterilized galaxy. Their machines were like nothing Earth had ever seen. Drones swept the landscape, firing beams of light that vaporized anything with teeth sharp enough to bite, claws strong enough to tear. In their wake, the towering machines scorched the jungles and forests. Massive plumes of black smoke rose into the sky as entire ecosystems were reduced to ash. Rivers dried as the invaders spread their dominance, draining the Earth's natural life. Humanity, though technologically advanced in its own right, was no match for the Kralix's superior weapons and tactics. Military forces around the globe launched strikes, but it was like throwing stones at a tidal wave. Panic spread like wildfire. The animals fled in vain. The humans watched in horror, and Earth's governments could only stand by, their attempts to push back futile. The world was being hollowed out, one predator at a time. Yet, amidst the chaos and destruction, not everyone bowed to the inevitable. In the depths of the untouched wilderness, far from civilization, there lived a man, an enigma to most. He was a loner, a man who had spent years honing his connection to the natural world. While cities buzzed with the hum of industry, he had remained rooted to the earth, learning from its rhythms, its creatures. His closest companions weren't humans, but birds of prey, eagles. His respect for these apex hunters bordered on reverence. To the man, nature was not chaotic. It was balanced, methodical. And when the Kralix came, destroying everything they couldn't control, he felt something inside him stir. They were killing Earth's protectors, the predators, the wilderness itself. And in doing so, they had unleashed something they couldn't understand him. He watched in silence as the invaders approached his sanctuary. His trained eagles perched beside him, their sharp eyes locked on the strange, hovering machines sweeping through the trees. His fists clenched, his mind racing. These aliens were erasing nature's guardians, the very beings that had shaped the world. He wouldn't let it continue. The Kralix didn't expect resistance. They were used to bending worlds to their will with minimal opposition. But they didn't account for the man who had mastered both nature and warfare in his isolation. He knew the land, its creatures, its secrets. And now, with the invaders encroaching, he prepared to strike. In the distance, the trees blazed with alien fire. Predators fell one by one as their natural habitats were consumed. But something else was about to rise from the ashes, a force even the Kralix couldn't predict. The man's eyes narrowed as he signaled to his eagles. They took flight, their wings slicing through the smoky air, and for the first time, the Kralix would face an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. The invasion had begun, but so had the man's resistance. The man moved like a shadow through the burning forest, his eyes scanning the smoldering wreckage left by the Kralix machines. The air smelled of charred wood and singed fur, the remains of Earth's great predators scattered among the ruins. Lions, wolves, and countless others had fallen, their lifeless forms twisted in unnatural death. It was not just an invasion, it was extermination. The Kralix were wiping away the planet's spirit, tearing out its wild heart. But where the machines saw chaos, the man saw purpose. The predators weren't just beasts. They were the guardians of Earth's natural order. And with them gone, something inside him snapped, a deep, primal rage that he had long kept buried. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about vengeance. For every predator that fell, he would make the invaders pay. His eagles flew high above, circling like vigilant sentinels. The bald eagle, a symbol of untamed strength, perched on his right shoulder, while the golden eagle, faster and more aggressive, soared beside them. These birds were not mere pets. They were extensions of his will. He had trained them from hatchlings, forged a bond deeper than words could express. Together, they had hunted the wildest corners of the earth. Now, they would hunt something far more dangerous. The man crouched behind a fallen tree, his keen eyes catching sight of a Kralix drone hovering nearby, scanning for any remaining life. With a subtle gesture, the bald eagle launched from his arm, silent as a whisper. In a blur of motion, it struck the drone's fragile sensors, shattering the delicate glass. Sparks flew as the machine spiraled to the ground, disabled before it could signal for help. The Kralix thought they were invincible, their machines unstoppable. But they had never encountered anything like him, a warrior who knew every inch of this land, who could strike without warning and disappear just as quickly. The man moved again, darting between the blackened trees, always staying one step ahead of the enemy's sweeping sensors. His eagles followed, diving and striking at any machine that dared approach. It wasn't long before the Kralix noticed something was wrong. Their perfect, orderly invasion was starting to show cracks. Small patrols of their soldiers began landing in the area, their insect-like bodies moving with eerie precision. They wore advanced exoskeletons that glowed with a faint blue light, their eyes scanning the destruction for signs of resistance. The man watched them from a distance, studying their movements. He had no doubt these soldiers were lethal, trained to deal with any threat the galaxy could offer. But they weren't prepared for the ferocity of Earth's untamed wild. The man knew the land better than they ever could, and he wasn't afraid to use it to his advantage. He let out a sharp whistle, and the golden eagle dived from the sky like a lightning bolt. It swooped low, just above the soldiers, its talons striking at their exposed joints with surgical precision. The Kralix soldiers staggered, disoriented by the unexpected assault. The man didn't waste a second. With a fierce cry, he lunged from his hiding place, his knife flashing in the dim light. The first soldier fell before it even saw him. The second swung its energy weapon, but the man ducked low, sliding beneath its guard and plunging his blade into the creature's neck. The third fired, a searing beam of light, missing him by inches. But before it could correct its aim, the bald eagle struck again, ripping the weapon from its hands with its powerful beak. In mere moments, the patrol lay in the dirt, lifeless. The man stood over them, his breath steady despite the rush of combat. His eagles returned to his side, feathers unruffled. The battle had only just begun, but already he could feel the tide turning. The Kralix might have the technology, but they lacked something far more important: the will to survive in a world they didn't understand. He looked to the horizon, where more Kralix ships descended, their dark shadows looming over the land like vultures waiting to feast. But this was his territory, and he would defend it with everything he had. The resistance had truly begun, and the man was ready for war. The landscape had become a battleground of unrelenting savagery. The Kralix, once confident in their technological supremacy, now found themselves being hunted. The man, cloaked in the dirt and shadows of his ravaged world, moved with precision and purpose. He had long understood that victory against such an enemy would require more than brute force. It would demand cunning, cruelty, and an unrelenting assault on their weaknesses. And in this war, his eagles were his deadliest weapons. From the moment the Kralix set foot on Earth, they assumed they were facing a backward, primitive race. They didn't account for a warrior who had mastered not only the wilderness, but also the ancient art of war. The man knew that direct confrontations would be costly, so he turned to guerrilla tactics, ambushes, traps, and psychological warfare that eroded the invaders' morale and control. At dawn, he set a trap near a crater where a Kralix patrol was scheduled to pass. The soil around the crater was deceptive, loose enough to swallow anything heavier than a man. The warrior crouched low in the thick brush, the bald eagle perched silently beside him, its beady eyes glinting with anticipation. In the distance, the familiar whine of Kralix hovercrafts echoed through the air. The Kralix unit, hovering above the ground to avoid triggering conventional traps, passed over the crater. But their sensors had no way of detecting the swarm of eagles that descended upon them. With a sharp whistle, the man unleashed his birds, and they dove as one. Feathers glinting in the morning sun, talons extended like razors. The golden eagle led the charge, crashing into the lead craft with a fury born of years in the wild. The Kralix reacted too slowly. The birds had been trained to strike at their weak points. The exposed circuits on their energy cannons and the glass-like optics that controlled their targeting systems. In seconds, the drones were disabled, their once lethal weaponry reduced to nothing more than sparking debris. The patrol spun wildly in the air unbalanced, before crashing into the waiting crater, sinking deep into the soil. The man advanced, silent as death, his eyes cold and calculating. He picked off the survivors one by one, his knife quick and merciless. The Kralix had no time to react, no time to process how a single man and his birds had dismantled their superior technology with nothing more than claws and blades. The ground was stained with black blood by the time the last Kralix soldier fell, its alien screams silenced by the man's unwavering hand. The warrior stood over the wreckage, his breath steady despite the carnage around him. His eagles circled overhead, a sign of both dominance and loyalty. In a matter of minutes, an entire Kralix patrol had been reduced to rubble, their bodies swallowed by the earth they had tried to conquer. But the man wasn't finished. He knew that fear could be a weapon as powerful as any blade. He left the broken remains of the patrol scattered in a visible area, knowing that other Kralix units would find them. The invaders would see what had happened here and understand. They were not safe, not from him, not from his birds. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the man retreated to higher ground, setting his sights on the next phase of his attack. The Kralix had numbers and technology, but he had the land, the animals, and a brutal determination. He would turn Earth itself into a weapon. His eagles were not just warriors, they were symbols. Each time they struck, it was a reminder to the Kralix that this planet, wild and unpredictable, could not be tamed. The invaders could burn the forests, slaughter the predators, and ravage the landscape, but they could never take away the man's will to fight. The Kralix might send reinforcements, might escalate their tactics, but it wouldn't matter. The warrior had already learned how to exploit their arrogance. They relied too heavily on their machines, while he relied on something far more ancient and primal, instinct, experience, and an unbreakable bond with his eagles. The wind stirred, carrying with it the scent of ash and blood. The Kralix might think they could conquer Earth, but they had underestimated the force of nature that stood against them. The man and his eagles would continue their war until the invaders were nothing more than a distant memory, wiped away like the predators they had so foolishly tried to destroy. The day of reckoning had come. High above the smoldering remnants of the jungle, Kralix warships blotted out the sky, their blackened silhouettes casting long shadows across the ravaged land. They had grown desperate, and desperation made them dangerous. Their plan was simple: eliminate the man, eliminate the resistance. But the warrior knew this day would come. His eagles flew in tight formations overhead, their keen eyes scanning the terrain below. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment, knowing that his next move would decide the fate of not just the remaining wildlife, but the entire planet. The Kralix general, a towering figure encased in sleek black armor, disembarked from his command ship with an air of finality. Around him, the alien soldiers marched in synchronized formation, each carrying weapons that crackled with lethal energy. They moved through the decimated jungle, their sensors scanning for any sign of movement, any flicker of life. But the man, standing on the edge of a cliff, watching them approach, was not hiding. He waited in full view, his body adorned in scavenged armor and weapons strapped to his side. Beside him, his eagles perched, their sharp beaks gleaming in the pale light. The final battle was about to begin. Without warning, the man let out a piercing whistle, and the eagles took flight. Their wings beat against the heavy air, propelling them toward the advancing Kralix forces. In an instant, chaos erupted. The Kralix unleashed a barrage of plasma fire, but the eagles were faster. They swooped down with terrifying precision, talons extended, slicing through metal and alien flesh alike. The warrior charged down the cliffside, his feet pounding against the earth as he closed the distance. His mind was singularly focused. Take out the general, and the rest would fall. He weaved through the battlefield, a blur of speed and brutality. One Kralix soldier after another fell beneath his blade, their screams drowned out by the roars of his eagles above. Amidst the carnage, the general's cold, glowing eyes locked onto the warrior. He activated his energy blade, a weapon of deadly precision, and marched forward. The ground trembled beneath his feet as the two adversaries approached each other. This was a confrontation that had been building since the moment the Kralix arrived on Earth. The first clash was thunderous. The general's blade hissed against the man's steel, the air itself crackling with energy. The warrior's movements were fluid, honed by years of survival, while the general's strikes were calculated, mechanical. For a moment, it seemed as though the Kralix might overpower him, but the man fought with the fury of a cornered animal. Above them, the eagles continued their assault, tearing through the Kralix ranks with unparalleled ferocity. The golden eagle, the fiercest of them all, circled above the general, waiting for the right moment. The battle raged around them, but the man remained focused, his every move deliberate. He was no longer just a man fighting for survival. He was a force of nature, an embodiment of the wild earth that the Kralix sought to destroy. With a guttural cry, the general swung his blade in a wide arc, aiming for the man's heart. But the warrior was faster. He ducked beneath the strike, driving his knife deep into the general's exposed side. The alien staggered, its black blood spilling onto the ground. In that moment of weakness, the golden eagle dove, its talons sinking into the general's face, ripping away his helmet in a flurry of feathers and steel. The Kralix general fell to his knees, his glowing eyes dimming as the life drained from his body. The man stood over him, his breath steady despite the exhaustion that gripped his muscles. The battle was over, with their leader dead. The remaining Kralix forces began to retreat, their confidence shattered. The warrior watched them flee, knowing that their defeat was inevitable. His eagles landed beside him, their wings still quivering with the adrenaline of battle. They had won, not just through strength, but through unity, man and beast fighting as one. As the last of the Kralix ships vanished from the sky, the man looked out over the ruined landscape. The jungle had been scarred, the predators nearly wiped out, but there was hope. He had protected what remained, and with time, the earth would heal. The eagles screeched triumphantly, their cries echoing across the land. The man sheathed his knife, his mission complete. The Kralix had come to eradicate the wild, but in the end, it was the wild that had defeated them. And though the world lay in ruins, the warrior knew one thing for certain. As long as he and his eagles stood guard, no force, alien or otherwise, would ever threaten Earth again.